My name is Shantell Powell, and I'm an author based out of here in Kitchener. Robert Kirk was the seventh son of a seventh son, and he had second sight. Though he was a man of God, he frequently spoke with fairies. People whispered, he claimed fairies were the intermediary between man and angels, and best seen at twilight, at the liminal point between life and death. Though some people had their druthers, they knew it was best not to argue with a man of God. Robert Kirk never died. Like that antediluvian Enoch, he was taken away, but rather than being raised up in heaven to become a voice of God, he was pulled to the side, drawn into the hollow hills to be chaplain to the fairy queen, not quite alive, but not dead either. He was still in his nightgown when he vanished into the gloaming. At least that's what folks said. For years, people feared to go too close to the hollow hills. They placed propitiatory coins atop the collection plate of his empty grave in the rainy Aberfoyle churchyard. A bribe to keep the fairies away, perhaps. A prophylactic against changelings or the angel of death. The piles of coins grew tall. The piles of coins grew moss. The pile of coins grew tempting. One moonless night, when the ground was uncharacteristically dry and the moss crunched underfoot, grave robbers skulked into the cemetery where Robert Kirk's memory was entombed. They weren't superstitious like all those other folks. They were more pragmatic. A man of Robert Kirk's ilk would surely have something of value within that tomb, because there was certainly something of value atop it. They scraped the coins from atop the lid of his tomb, rubbed the dying moss off, and dumped the money into his satchel. Then they slid the stone block off the sepulchre. They'd hoped for gold and jewels, but there was none of that here for them. A cauldron of moss boiled out of the grave, revealing moldering bones within the casket. It seemed unlikely to the thieves that this was the body of Robert Kirk. He had, by all reports, been a normal-looking man, and there was no sign of his nightgown or of any clothes at all. Not even a button. These bones were not human, at least not all of them were. Roots from a nearby tree impaled the rib cage, threading their way through the eye sockets of a human skull. But from that skull sprouted horns like those of a young goat. The skull's teeth were sharp like a cat's, and it wore its bottom jaw like a crown. Cloven hooves dangled from the ends of long shins. Instead of a man's skeletal arms, there were skeletal wings. And scattered all around were acorns and witchstones rubbed smooth. Because there was no treasure, the grave robbers felt robbed. All that work, and this is what they found? A raven croaked from atop a nearby rowan tree, and men took flight with their picks, their shovels, and their sacks of coins. They abandoned the grave, leaving it open to the elements. Dead moss and dead leaves sifted in and cloaked dead bones. The grave robbers did not leave alone. From that night hence, a sepulchral voice haunted their dreams, a voice as heavy and phlegmy as pneumonia. The voice of death rattled like loose shutters in a windy rainstorm. The men spent their ill-gained coins on drink, but no matter how much they drank, death's voice returned each night, bidding them to return the grave to its proper state, ordering them to return the stolen coins. Finally, they journeyed back to the scene of their crime, but it was too late. The tomb had already been set back in order. For years, the grave robbers were plagued by this voice in the night. They grew gaunt. They grew dark circles beneath their eyes. They grew affrighted by shadows. They could not return the coins. All their gin money was spent. From the corners of their eyes, they saw strange flitting things like colorless orbs and the flutter of insectile wings. The men lumbered along throughout the night in order to keep themselves from sleep, but sleep, like time, always catches up. They forswore their grave-robbing ways. They became churchmen, mumbling as they thumbed at their rosaries on bent knees, but people crossed themselves and avoided them, and the choking, wet voice of death followed them into their dreams. In desperation, they sought out the hollow hills. They lurched around the fairy mound seeking a way in, and one day they saw a hare go to ground. This was no normal hare. It had brilliant eyes as green as arsenic, and it wore a crown of ivy. It walked on hind legs like a man. They stole picks and shovels, then sold their own long ago for gin. And they dug out the hare's den. They toiled until they excavated their own graves in the side of the hill, and then they climbed inside. The earth crumbled down behind them, sealing them within. It is said the coins from Robert Kirk's grave are still in circulation. It is known because every now and then, people have a compulsion to place a coin upon the gravestone of Robert Kirk. The piles of coins grow tall, the piles of coins grow moss, but the pile of coins does not grow tempting. The grave robbers have never been seen again, but if you visit the hollow hills near twilight, it's said you can see their ghosts wandering with coins instead of eyes. Thank you very much, everyone.